Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada is community founder Acharya ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramamsa Parapakacharya Astatara Shatya Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki. Shri Guru Parampara ki. Shri Rup Shri Sanatan Shri Bhadranath Shri Pakapalabhata Das Raghunath ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavina ki. Namacharya Srila Das Thakur ki. Premchko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Kadada Shiva Sati Gaura Bhaktavinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopnath Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Kirgavadam ki. Shri Vrindavanam ki. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki. Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki. Ganga Maya Yamuna Maya ki. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi ki. Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shama Veta Bhaktavinda ki, Shri Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, it's my pleasure to be with you this morning. And I've been asked to speak on obstacles in devotional service. In Sanskrit, Krishna calls these obstacles paripantino. 2 obstacles Krishna explains in verse 334. And now we will hear about these obstacles. Chapter 3, text 34. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 It's on the screen. I can try to make it a little bigger on the screen. Just yeah, no, I will do. I will do. Just a moment. That here. Zoom momentum. Oh, it's not this one. View. Yeah, I have it here. Zoom. You make it to 50. A little bigger. Momentum. You see it on your screen, the verse?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So please repeat. Indriyasyandriyasyarte.
Indriyasyandriyasyarte.
Ragadvesho vyavastito.
Ragadvesho vyavastito.
Tayornavasam agachat.
Tayornavasam agachet.
Toyasya paripantino.
Tohyasya paripantino.
Indriyasyandriyasyarte.
Indriyasyandriyasyarte.
Ragadvesho vyavastito.
Ragadvesho vyavastito.
Tayornavasam agachat.
Tayornavasam agachet.
Toyasya paripantino.
Tohyasya paripantino.
Toyasya paripantino.
Tohyasya paripantino.
Ragadvesho vyavastito.
Ragadvesho vyavastito.
Tayornavasam agachat.
Tayornavasam agachet.
Toyasya paripantino.
Tohyasya paripantino.
Someone wants to repeat? Indriyasyate Ragadvesha Vyavastita Tayo Navasamagatchet Toyasya Paripantino Indriyasindriyasyaste Ragadvesha Vyavastito Tayo Navasamagatchet Toyasya Paripantino. Okay. Indriyasindriyasyaste
Ragadvesho vyavastito
Ragadvesha Vyavastito
tayo
Tayo Navasamagatchet
tohyasya paripantino
Toyasya Paripantino. Manos. Yep. No. Okay. Then we go to the word for word translation. Indriyasya of the senses. Indriyasyate
indriyasyate
in the sense objects.
in the sense objects
Raga,
raga
attachment,
dvesha
also detachment. Vyavastita, put under regulations. Tayo, of them. Na, never. Vasam, control. Agachet, one should come. Tao, those. He, certainly. Asya, his. Paripantino, stumbling blocks. Now, translation and purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So what are the stumbling blocks? Two of them? Attachment and aversion. Attachment in Sanskrit is raga, and aversion is dvesha. Raga, dvesha. Duality. Okay, come back to that later. Purport. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement, but one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scripture does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to scriptural injunction, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any women other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mothers, but in spite of such injunction, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise they they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under the rules and regulations. And yet, we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray. As much as there is a chance of an accident, or even on the royal roads, although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness, or acting always in the loving service of Krishna, detached one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. Go back to the verse once again. Indriyasyandhyasyachte ragadvesha vyavastita tayo navasamagachat tayasya paripantina. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Om Jnanatimandasya Chinanjana Shanakaya Shakshurun Malitam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namah. Chaitanyamanopistam stapitam yena bhutale svamrupakadamayam dadati svapadantikam vandeham shigo shiyuda padakamalam shigom vaishnavam sam shirupam jagajatam saganaragnatam vitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijanasaitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalita Shivishakam Vitam Sham He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Chatpate Gopesha Gopkakanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanshana Kaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwe Vishabhana Sutadeve Pranamama Hari Priye Vanka Kalapatavisha Kripa Sinyavevsha Patnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Desatarne Srila Prabhupada Ki. So, obstacles in devotional service, that we must overcome them. Even in Jersey City, we have to overcome these obstacles, but maybe you don't have them here. Do you chant Hare Krishna sometimes? Or who chants sometimes Hare Krishna? No. When you chant, do you think always Are you always focused on the chanting? No, no. Oh, I'm not alone with that problem. What is the, yeah, so the mind is thinking about other things. That means attachment and aversion. That the mind usually doesn't think of Krishna, of our relationship with Krishna. It thinks about problems in this world. And these are our big obstacles. That it thinks about things related to this body. It's due to the bodily concept of life. But Krishna, what is the highest instruction of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita? Sarvadam Parichigam Mam Kam Samsha Am Samsarpavya Maksisya Macha. Surrender unto me. Give everything up. You just follow the instruction I gave in the previous verse. Just do that, I will take care of you. What was that instruction in the previous verse? Man mana Mavamat Bhakta Machari Maska Pratijani Priyosimi. So Krishna says, yes, just think of me, man mana. But we are struggling to do that. It's important, because what's the purpose of that thinking of Krishna? What's the purpose of that thinking of Krishna? Is just thinking of Krishna sufficient? No. Someone asked Bhakti Charamach, what does it mean chanting Hare Krishna? And he said simply, chanting Hare Krishna means saying to Krishna, I love you. It's not just thinking, it's love. But before giving love, you must give attention to those who you love, right? Otherwise, how can you that? And to give attention to someone you love, you must know the person. So we must hear about Krishna to get to know him, and then this attachment to Krishna will develop. Attachment to Krishna. That, but here it said, because in the second chapter of the Gita, Krishna speaks of Ya Pasayadmika Buddhi Ekanako Mana. You must develop one-pointed intelligence. The spiritualist, their mind is fixed on one point, that's Krishna. But the materialists, they have many desires, and their mind goes everywhere because of attachment and aversion. That and Krishna says, if you have that attachment and aversion, what does it cause, this attachment and aversion? Bogasvaya prasaktanam taya paritashetisam. By becoming attached to sense gratification, which lust, because lust causes this attachment and aversion. That lust causes attachment and aversion, and this lust is nothing than identification with the body, because we want what gives pleasure to the body, to the mind, to the sense, and we don't want what gives this distress. And everything in this world is busy with that, to give the pleasures as much more pleasure, enjoy pleasure, and keep away the distress. That. So this is something, because in this verse, Bhagavad Gita, then in the next verse, then a few verses later, so Krishna says, yeah, how to come to that point, he says, do your duty for me. Do your duty in the Varnashram. Then you come to goodness. That's the first step. Don't do the duty of others. Do your own duty, just what you are good in, what's your nature, and that's the first step. That then you are acting out of duty, not out of this attachment and aversion. And what does Arjuna say? Krishna, I want to do this, but I have this attachment to Bhishma Dev, my grandfather. I cannot kill him. I'm so attached to him. It's bodily attachment. It's a kind of lust and it cannot give it up. Say, Krishna, what is this force? This force is so strong. It's so strong. But what is it that forces me to act according to this attachment and aversion? And how can I overcome it? And what is Krishna's answer? Kama isha, Krodha isha, Rajyakama, Samudvara, Masana, Mahapana, Vijnana, Iyavayana. It's lust, Arjuna, that causes that. It's born of the mode of it's born of the mode of passion, causes wrath, anger, and so on. That, of course, Krishna explains, yeah, it is this lust that covers the consciousness, the pure consciousness of the soul. Pure consciousness is Krishna consciousness. The consciousness in which we are conscious of ourselves, of Krishna, and our relationships, a relationship of love. Because that's what we all want. What do we want? We want to love and be loved. But do we get on in this world? You can't get it when you are absorbed in this raga and dvesha. No way. And it contaminates our consciousness, our pure consciousness. Because in our pure consciousness, we are conscious of Krishna. We are on the transcendental platform. But our consciousness, which comes from the soul is the consciousness in the body, is polluted by the modes of passion and ignorance. It's covered. And Krishna says, Avritam jnanam etena. Avritam jnanam etena. That it says your eternal knowledge of a spirit soul is avritam. It's covered. That and because it's covered by this lust, and this lust can never be satisfied. Therefore, Arjuna, this is your first enemy, your greatest enemy. The greatest enemy is inside us, in our mind. That's the greatest enemy. It takes away our intelligence. Avitam jatam. Janina nityavarana. Kamrupena kantya dushprenanalenishan. It can never be satisfied. They did a survey for millionaires, well, billionaires. They had all 1 billion. And they asked them, but each billionaire, what do you want? And it was practically, it came down on all the answers came down on, I want 2 billion. Always more, never satisfied. So Arjuna is asking Krishna, it's the enemy. Arjuna is a military man. He wants to make a strategic plan to kill the enemy. So where is the enemy? And how can I conquer this enemy? And Krishna says the enemy is in the mind, the intelligence, the senses, the body. But to conquer this enemy, you must regulate first the senses. Regulate. And that's very important to understand. Regulate. How can we regulate the senses? Krishna explains. To regulate the senses, first you must know that higher than the object of the senses are the senses. Higher than the senses is the mind, because the mind controls the senses. And higher than the senses is, what's higher than the senses? Intelligence. And higher than the intelligence is the soul, a real soul. So that's the first thing you must know, Krishna is saying. That what is higher. And then Krishna explains that in the next verse, how to regulate the senses, how to regulate the mind, how to regulate the intelligence. That it says the soul must control the intelligence must control the mind must control the senses. But it says controlling. What does it mean, controlling? That the first step in that controlling process is to feed the intelligence with transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge factually means acting as a soul, not as the body, acting as a spirit soul. That acting as a spirit soul means to act as a spirit soul. You have this transcendental knowledge. You need to have three basic understandings. First is who Krishna is. If you understand who Krishna is, then you understand, oh, I'm not Krishna. I'm his servant, part and parcel. Maar van sociale Shiva Bhuta Sanatana. We are a parcel. And our relationship is one of love, loving Krishna. So engaging in that loving relationship is activity of the soul. So you must feed this intelligence with transcendental knowledge. What's the title of the next chapter? Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. What's the title of the chapter? Chapter 4. Transcendental knowledge, yes. Therefore, in the next chapter, Krishna is going to speak about transcendental knowledge. That make it sense, the connection between third and fourth chapter. So Krishna says transcendental knowledge. And then with that transcendental knowledge, then how is the soul going to control the intelligence if it receives spiritual knowledge, transcendental knowledge? How does the soul controls the intelligence? How does he do that? How does the soul do that? It's important. We are the soul. What does the soul do? Let's say first, what's the symptom of the soul? How do we know the soul is in the body? Consciousness.
Consciousness.
Yes, a dead body has no consciousness. The soul is gone. It's consciousness. That's the symptom. but for the activity of the soul. That very important. It's explained in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There are 5 factors of action. That I think 1814 or something. That so 5 factors of action. There is the body. There is the mind with all the endeavors. That without the body of the mind, we cannot do anything. And there are the senses. But who controls these energies? The mind, the senses, the body. Who controls these energies? It's material energy, right? Our mind is material energy. Senses, body is who controls the material energy according to Bhagavad Gita? Good to know who is in control. Mayad yakshena prakriti chuchache chachacha. Krishna says, I'm in control. I'm in control of material nature, of all moving and non-moving living entities. So Krishna is controlling prakriti, material nature. So he controls these 3 as the super soul. There's a 4th element. But the 5th element is the karta, the doer, the soul. How does the soul do things? If we don't know what we are doing, so what we are doing here is important. Why did we get this body? Krishna says, why did we get this body? Krishna says. He explains it in the 15th chapter. Verse, no, in the 13th chapter. 21 or 22. There he says that Bhunkte Prakriti Jangunam. We desire to exploit material nature, material desire. So desire comes from the soul, attachment. That here we speak, in the verse today, we speak out raga tvesha, right? Attachment and aversion. So the soul becomes attached either to, in this material world, either to material pleasure and becomes averse to distress. That is also attachment, but negative. The soul becomes attached. In the spiritual world, all souls are also attached. To what are they attached in the spiritual world? Krishna. That's the liberated state, when we are completely attached to Krishna. And now we are attached to things in this world, out of lust. That's the problem. The soul desires. So when the intelligence is fed with Krishna, with Krishna conscious philosophy, the signs of the soul, who we are, then it comes in our mind, and the intelligence desires, yes, we want to follow that, and it pushes the intelligence with desire. Yes, do that. And then the intelligence directs the mind. Yes, you engage in Krishna's service, and the mind engages the senses in Krishna's service, and the mind is controlled. The whole thing is controlled. But mostly it's different. That the materialist in this world that gets sense perception and say, oh, that's nice, I want to enjoy it. And the desire to enjoy comes into the mind. And the mind tells the intelligence, make a plan to get that enjoyment. And intelligence is misused by the mind to make plans for sense gratification. But intelligence is a higher material energy than the mind. That's not normal. That causes problems. That so higher than the intelligence is so like so. The idea is that this engagement in devotional service is described in the Bhagavatam. Savaipum saparodharmo yato bhaktiradoksya ahaitakapatirta yatma shrupa shidati. The highest occupation of mankind is devotional service to the Supreme Lord who cannot be perceived by material senses, adoksha. But this service must have two characteristics. It must be first a hierarchy. Means only the desire to please Krishna, no other desire. Ekana Korunana, Vyavsatmika Buddhi Ekana Korunan, only one. And it should be a pratyata, without interruption. So we must always, the intelligence must always direct the mind to engage in devotional service and never otherwise. Never listen to the mind. I take it easy. Let's see how I feel. And there you go. That the mind is an instrument to be used. Don't let the instrument use you. Then you are in problems. And we see all these problems in this world, all coming from an uncontrolled mind. That so this lust. When Srila Prabhupada was at the West Coast here in America, it was in the 60s, that San Francisco or something. And he gave a morning lecture. And one of the beginning devotees said that, asked Prabhupada, do you have lust in your mind? You must have the audacity to ask it. But anyway, Prabhupada said humbly, yes. Then a few hours later, he went out the temple and to the car. They were driving to another temple. And the devotee was this question in the morning, opened the door for Prabhupada. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, yes, I have lust in my mind, but I have no time for it. Mm. So if we are always engaged in Krishna consciousness, then no time for this lust. If you have Krishna in your mind, Srila Upanishad says the two things happening. Krishna is antiseptic and prophylactic. That antiseptic means you have Krishna in your mind, and surely all this lust, anger, greed is leaving your system. You become purified. That's called purification of the heart. And the second thing that happens, Krishna is prophylactic. And that's important. He acts like a vaccine. Vaccine means as long as you think of Krishna, no new contamination can come in. No way to come in. It's not possible. So therefore we should always engage in Krishna consciousness. That's our training the mind to think always of Krishna. But of course, that is a process with stages. It doesn't happen overnight. That we are chanting the holy name, but we are not always focusing on the holy name. And why is that? Because we make offenses. We have not the right mentality. The right mentality comes for chanting comes when we know who Krishna is, who we know we are, and what our relationship is. That's important. That's called Sambandha Jnana, knowledge of our relationship with Krishna. That if you don't know who Krishna is, and if you don't know that Krishna, the controller is of material nature. We spoke about these 5 factors of action, and we are one of these 5. And we can understand that Krishna controls nature. Do you control your heartbeat? No. Do you control your digestion? No. Do you control what you will remember next moment? No. So when the soul does something, the soul desires, but it's only one of these 5 factors. I'm desiring to speak. The soul desires to speak, attached to speaking about Krishna. But the speaking is done by the super soul, Krishna in the heart. I don't know how these words coming out of my mouth, but I desire it of the soul. Krishna does. By that you become only Krishna conscious. You start to see that factually there is only Krishna in this world who does everything. And we are in Krishna. Everything is related to Krishna. But to come to that point, that yes, we must have transcendental knowledge. But to get this transcendental knowledge, you don't just get from reading a book. You have Bhagavad Gita, you read book, you get transcendental knowledge. That it's just reading is not enough. Because feeding the intelligence with transcendental knowledge is a first step. But this intelligence must become realized knowledge. And this realized knowledge is not an endeavor with the intelligence. That we need to understand this process from Bhagavad Gita. How do we get knowledge? Because that's explained in the 4th chapter. And also in the 10th chapter. 10:10. That's an essential verse. Tesham satyuknam bachampi devukam dadami bodhi yogam tam yena mamupayantite. So Krishna gives us realization to the heart when we serve him with a little love. But in the beginning, we don't know what love is. That to develop that little love, Krishna says, you must accept a bona fide spiritual master. You must accept a bona fide spiritual master, inquire from him about Krishna, and serve him humbly. And you hear from the spiritual master and you ask questions. So like today we are studying this verse, and our issue is how to overcome these obstacles of devotional service, this raga and dvesha. So the point is, when we read a verse and the purpose of Bhagavad Gita, we must question what is there for me. How can I bring that in practice in my life? That's very important. And if you understand how to bring it in practice, then you bring it in practice and there must be a certain result. The result should be that we gradually be able to fix our mind on Krishna, on the chanting of the holy name. And then the heart will become purified. So how to do that? We have learned today that from Arjuna and Krishna that we must control the mind, senses with our intelligence, and our intelligence must guide mind and senses with transcendental knowledge, and the soul must become attached to it. If the soul is not attached to it, then it will desire to do something else. So this is very important. Factually, I want to go a little deeper, that just for the sake to give you a deeper understanding. Because if we speak about this verse, attachment and aversion, we must go to the deeper cause of this attachment and aversion. And that lies in our constitutional position. When we were in the spiritual world with Krishna, we told Krishna, I'm curious, Krishna, what would it be to be Krishna for a moment? And Krishna said, do you want to experience it? And we said, yes. Krishna asked again, are you really sure? And I said, yes. Then Krishna, okay, I will give you the experience, Krishna said, but I will fulfill your desire. But there's one problem. I'm Krishna, you cannot be Krishna. But no problem, Krishna said. I will bring you in illusion so that you think you are Krishna. But to act in this illusion, you cannot play Krishna as a spirit soul, but because that's not your position as a constitutional soul. You cannot use your spiritual body for material activities. But no problem. I will give you a material body, a subtle body, and a gross body. And so then we enter to have the experience into a cloud in the spiritual world. This black cloud are all the material worlds. That's good. It means we are still in the spiritual world. It's part of the spiritual world. But the bad news, that's the good news, but the bad news is we are in the prison section. So we get a gross and a subtle body. Why did we get this subtle body? Because Prabhupada explains, that's very important. Listen careful to that. It's not easy to understand, but I'm sure you will understand. In the Bhagavatam, first canto, 7th chapter, verse 4 till 7, there Srila Vyasadeva, he meditates on the absolute truth with devotion, and he gives his realizations. In one of these purports there, Srila Prabhupada writes, the spirit soul has its own thinking, feeling, and willing in the unconditioned state, in the liberated state. So in the spiritual world, we have our own thinking, feeling, and willing. But if thinking, feeling, and willing is used for this attachment and aversion, that in this material world, that cannot be done by the spirit soul. Therefore, we get a subtle body to do that. It's a temporary body, but it's very old, our subtle body. It's here since we came to this material world. So we came to the prison section of the material world, of the spiritual world. There is a material world. When you enter the prison, you get new clothes, new underwear, overcoats. Our underwear is a subtle body. The overcoat is a gross body. And so now we are here. Therefore, Prabhupada explained in one lecture, he said, you see this hand? This is a gross hand. This gross hand exists because there is a subtle hand, the subtle body, the subtle body. The gross body is built upon the subtle body. At the time of death, the super soul takes the soul and brings it to its next destination according to the contamination of consciousness. You get a certain body that we create. So, but Prabhupada said you have the gross arm and the gross hand, and then you have the subtle hand and the subtle arm, and beneath the subtle hand and arm, you have the spiritual hand and arm. So without the spiritual body, the subtle and the gross cannot exist. It are coverings. The Prabhupada speaks about our spiritual senses are covered. But what happens when you start to perform devotion service? You make your spiritual body again active. That gradually. And once the heart is completely purified, you become fully aware of your spiritual body. And the awareness of your subtle and gross body goes back. And when you come to Bhava, you are identified with the spiritual body. That it's a gradual process. But so it's important to get free of this lust and overcome these obstacles, that we have to follow a process with stages. The stages are explained by Rupa Goswami, Nectar of Devotion. 9 stages. Shraddha, first faith, then Sadhu Sangha. Shraddha, you hear from a spiritual master, a lecture of a guru or a swami or a senior devotee, and you say that makes sense. And then Sadhu Sangha, that's what we are doing now. You come together, you speak about Krishna, and you learn the practice of devotional service. And then you accept the spiritual master, and then you start Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya is you start to practice devotional service. Bhajana Kriya, in the beginning, it's difficult to follow all these rules and regulations, because we have to follow regulations, things not to do. Why? Because they are breaking the principles of religion, that which is truthfulness, mercy, cleanliness, austerity. That if you don't practice these things, lust comes in your mind. So we have to stop the inflow of lust. Stop it. Therefore, we have to follow regulations. Because if you don't stop it, this raga dvesha becomes a bigger problem. And then we have to perform devotional service to get rid of this raga and dvesha. How do we get rid of this raga and dvesha? Very simple. We become attached to Krishna. And when we become attached to Krishna in love, Bhagavatam says as 2 results, that you will realize transcendental knowledge, and together you will become detached from this world. But to come to that higher platform, you need taste for transcendental devotional service. Without taste, you cannot make it. And taste you get from those who have taste in devotional service. It's devotees. Therefore, without regular association of devotional service, no way to make spiritual advancement. Maya is too strong. The material energy is too strong. But we are together. But the Sharmaharaj explained us, it's like you have one stick easy to break, but a bundle of sticks you cannot break. Then Maya cannot do anything. Because when we are alone, out of association of the devotees, then you are alone with your mind, and it's your enemy number one. Don't listen to your mind, always engage your mind. To be alone with an enemy is not good. This is a big subject matter. I spoke 1 hour, and I would like to ask if there are questions, please. Yeah.
You said that Prabhu, in his San said that he doesn't have time for lust. You also said that to get rid of lust, you also need to be attached to Krishna. So, should we become a capitalist?
Please, should we become
a capitalist who's busy?
Yeah.
Or attached to Krishna who's broke?
Yeah. What's your question?
Yes. What do you mean by capitalist? Who is someone who's very busy, focused on work, doesn't have time for this?
Yeah. But
or someone who's attached to Krishna, doesn't have money.
Yeah.
Capitalist is more engaged in making more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the path.
Yeah.
The business of the capitalist is Bhungte Parati Jangunam. I'm going to explain to exploit material nature. At the university, one of the most cherished degrees is a BA in business administration. That business administration is setting up systems to exploit material nature with the least effort to get the greatest result. So, how to fulfill your lusty desires in a big way, that is the path to hell. That brings you far away from spiritual life. But devotees also do that sometimes, do business, but they do it for Krishna, only for Krishna. And the results they use for Krishna. By that is the point, that to get rid of this lust, we have this material contamination. We have our material nature. You cannot neglect that material nature in spiritual life. What is your material nature? Is that what you like to do? What you are good in? But the role of the spiritual master is, the spiritual master sees, oh, he likes to do that. Okay, the spiritual master will explain that how to do it for Krishna. I give an example. For myself, I was in the 90s, I was an accountant. So I was doing accountancy for already 15 years. And I go much back to Sharma. I said, yeah, the Radhadesh needs help with the accountancy and legal matters. I want you first to become a chartered accountant, was a higher level. But I had a desire, at that time, I was driving big cars. I had a BMW, beginning of the 90s, the 80s, 90s, I was driving big cars. I like to drive big cars. But as spiritual master, you become a chartered accountant. So I was in the temple, and every, to become a chartered accountant, I had to do a proof period in an accountancy office, which was, let's say, about more than 100 miles from Radhadesh, in miles. I had to do that 3 times a week, Radhadesh, Antwerp, and back. 200 miles every time, three times a week, 600 miles a week. I had to do that for 18 months.
Wow.
I did that for 18 months. After 18 months, I didn't want to drive cars anymore. The desire was gone. Just by following the instructions of the spiritual master. Krishna took care of it. That's the speciality of Krishna. It fulfills your material desire and takes it away. You become purified when your purpose in your mind becomes Krishna. But devotional service is not cheap. Yeah. Devotional service has levels. Krishna explains it in Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga. So the first level is Karmani Vatakarsya Mafdesh Kadachna. So you act out of duty, you are not attached to the results. It's very difficult. That's acting in Varnashram system also. But then, okay, that the next level is Shakhnarta Karmanoyatra Dokryam Karma Bandhana. Krishna says you act and give the result to me. So you do your work, you may not think of Krishna, but the results you give for Krishna. That's the next step. And that then the next step is Yat karos yatas nas yat yos dadas yat yatapasyas kauntya tat kusmanadarpanam. Then you start to do the activity itself for Krishna. The activity itself means you have to think of Krishna while you do it. I was an accountant, and at work I was giving in the beginning, before I joined the temple. I was head of administration in a hospital, and I was doing a lot of input on the computer. It was a mini computer. The computer was as big as this room, with big drives, and you had to go to the head console and then give some commands and put the right drive. That was like a washing machine. You had the drive out, 2.5 megabytes, and then another drive in. Anyway, that was. Okay, I was doing input of data in the computer, and that was practically automatically you did that. But I had Bhagavad Gita with me, and while doing input, I memorized verses. And when you had difficulties in my work, I was praying to Krishna, please help me, I'm doing it for you. So you are always connected with Krishna in your work. Yat karosi yatasnas. You have to do the work self for Krishna and also give the results of Krishna. And then that's the third step. And the fourth step of karma yoga is when it becomes bhakti yoga. Patram pushpam phalamtyam yome bhaktiya prayachati. Whatever you do, Krishna says, well, you offer me a flower, some water, a leaf, out of love for me. But that's a higher step. So it's a gradual process, yes?
Prabhuji, how do you give the results of your work to Krishna?
Yeah. Okay, you are a Grihastha, you are working outside. How do you do that? First of all, your house, you turn your house into a temple. Not difficult. You have a picture of Krishna and you offer your food. In later stage can be deities, but you tell Krishna, this is your house. And your family members, you turn into devotees. You're in the morning chanting Hare Krishna and hearing Bhagavatam. In the evening, hearing Bhagavad Gita, chanting Krishna together. And then you go to work. That how do you give, how do you do your work for Krishna? You get your salary. You must understand this is Krishna's money. And I pay a mortgage for my house, but my house has become a temple because we are worshiping Krishna every day. So your mortgage, your money is used for paying the temple. And you are going shopping, and you shop for Krishna, because whatever you shop, you prepare nicely at home, you cook for Krishna, you offer it to Krishna. So in that way, your work becomes dedicated to Krishna. It's also a process but we must work towards them, because that is the difference in consciousness. It's a difference in consciousness. This consciousness is explained in 330 of Bhagavad Gita. In 330, Lord Krishna says how to act as a spirit soul, not as the body. What's the difference in consciousness? Krishna says, one who acts as a spirit soul, he does not think himself the enjoyer. He does not think himself the proprietor. Because Krishna says, Bhaktam Chakratapasam Sarvalokamarshman Sudam Sarvabhutram Katramam Santirichati. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I'm the proprietor of all planets, and therefore I'm the enjoyer. Nothing is ours here. Before you came to this world, it was not yours, and soon you are going to leave. You cannot take anything with you. It belongs to Krishna, and therefore we offer it to Krishna. That not thinking oneself the enjoyer or proprietor. The proprietor is Krishna, and Krishna is the enjoyer. Can we not enjoy? Yes, but always in relation to Krishna. We can enjoy, but then the question is, what's the enjoyment of the body? What is the enjoyment of the soul? But the enjoyment of the body we know, attachment, raga, we become attached to it. But that's illusory enjoyment, because the body is temporary. You can give the body all your life enjoyment, but then the body dies, it's for nothing. Therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who lives for the pleasure of the senses lives for nothing. But what's the enjoyment of the soul? We know what's the enjoyment of the soul deep in I said that in the beginning. That's what we want. We want to love and be loved. But we don't get it in this world. That this love, this attachment to Krishna, that is what we want. And when we love Krishna, then we come to the real ecstasy of the soul, the real enjoyment of the soul, which is ecstasy, which is not an experience of the mind. It's an experience directly of the soul, this ecstasy. But we can only experience it when our heart is pure from all this lust, anger, and greed. Then you become undisturbed in this world. You understand there is no problem at all. We are not this body. That I understood when I came in contact with Krishna consciousness. For the materialist, death is sure. Death is reality, because everything what they are thinking they are will be finished. But we are beyond this body. That is difficult to understand. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that he says it's amazing one who can understand the soul. But he says in that same verse, it's also amazing that although they hear all this transcendental knowledge, they cannot understand that they are the soul. The most amazing, the power of the illusory energy. So it's not evident that everyone will take to Krishna consciousness. They cannot understand it. you need to be humble and get the mercy of the spiritual master. Then you can begin to understand it. Even you cannot begin to understand it. 1154 of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says to Arjuna, because Krishna has shown the universal form, and then he shows his four-armed form, and then finally again his two-armed form. And then Krishna says that to understand and to see this two-armed form as I'm standing before you, one must perform Ananya Bhakti, pure devotional service. That in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, one cannot even begin to understand Krishna if one does not take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. One cannot even begin to understand it. It's all illusion. The illusion energy is very strong. We hear this knowledge here, and we go out and we think again we are on the body, and there we go. That there, thinking the body means we are absorbed again in this attachment and aversion. And think that's so important. So important. All these relationships, all these things, and so on. These relationships in this world that are all temporary. Yeah, these problems also. In previous lives, life before, we had so many relationships, so many problems. It all goes. The only thing what's ours is our relationship with Krishna. Krishna is the only thing we have. The rest is all illusion. We came here to become Krishna, but Krishna wants us to give up that desire. This Bhakti Paratijana, trying to exploit material nature. Good. Yeah. Thank you very much. Tantra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Haribo.